Welcome to the Daily Agenda. It's a beautiful but very humid evening here in rural Nottinghamshire, and on the background behind me, as people often comment about it, is rural Derbyshire and North Leicestershire about there. So there you go, there you have it. There's a brief explanation of where we're at. And so people have been saying you should comment more on current affairs, Simon, instead of focusing so much on past events. Well, in actual fact, I would argue that what is past is present, quite frankly. Sorry, we also have an infestation of flying ants. We didn't get them last year, but we've got them this year. Absolutely, and they seem to love me for some reason. It's must be good blood and all that. But yes, current affairs. Well, if that's what people want, then of course I'm quite happy to deliver. However, I don't want to be in a situation whereby the Daily Agenda is just mimicking what everyone else does. That's never been my style, quite frankly. I'd like to cut a niche really as doing something rather more unique, which is what I've always been interested in far more. But, you know, I'm mindful of the fact that it's not just about what I want, it's about what other people want as well. So in the context of current affairs, which is entirely in keeping with the nationalist cause that we're all so interested in and committed to, well, yes, the argument rages on, should we do something to protect our women? Well, should that even be a question? Should that it really even be an issue? Because what it would suggest is that men today, so-called, are not actually doing anything or that much to protect our women. And of course, they're referring mainly to the grooming gang scandal, aren't they? Well, they weren't women, they were little girls. And that's a very important distinction to make, and I'll carry on making it. They were little girls, not women. Many of the victims are now women, and they're damaged and traumatized by what happened. And what happened to them was completely unacceptable and shocking. And yes, we are most definitely going to put an end to it. And as I've said, there's no point really in having a public inquiry that produces yet more whitewash and fudge. I'm sick and tired of seeing whitewash, and I'm not interested in fudge government inquiries, quite frankly. What do they achieve? What's the point of them? It just gives the government another opportunity to say, oh, well, look, you know, we did, a bit of hand-wringing, and we had a little investigation and fudged it, and now we can put it all to bed. Well, I'm not interested in that. I'm really interested in protecting our women and our young girls, and for that matter, our boys as well. You know, because white working class boys in particular are being treated in an appalling manner by the educational system. They're under attack. There's an organised mass assault against them by cultural Marxism. And that's something else that needs to be countered. And we have to do that by educating them ourselves. I mean, we had Kai Stevens on the show recently explaining how he was harassed for many years at school by the far left Prevent organisation, who are actually preventing nothing. All they're trying to do is brainwash people. Had they been in existence when I was at school, I would have been referred to them, and they would have got absolutely nowhere with me either. They failed with me, they failed with Kai Stevens, and didn't they in truth fail with all nationalists? Because we've all been subjected to this vile left-wing brainwashing, and it's made no difference. In fact, perhaps it has made some difference. It simply made us more determined to continue. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're continuing with our own thoughts, our own mindset. No one's brainwashed us. Absolutely no one brainwashed me. I can tell you that for a fact. I found my own way to nationalism. And so whilst people are talking about current affairs, it seems to be smattered all across social media and YouTube as well today about should we protect our own women? We should be doing more to protect our own women. Well, to be perfectly honest with you, I've always done everything I possibly could to protect women and also young girls. You know, I was at Halifax in 1991 with the British National Party, which really was the opening phase of the campaign against the grooming gangs, although it wasn't called a grooming gangs campaign at that time. So, in truth, I exclude myself from the category of having done nothing or doing nothing to protect women and young girls, as I've always been mindful of the fact of the need to protect them. That's why I was there with the British National Party in 1991. I wasn't there to play tiddlywinks and do some, some sightseeing in the West Yorkshire countryside on the border with Lancashire. No, on the contrary, I was there to do the business, at the business end of the campaign against the grooming gangs. So I think it's very much a case that men in general, yes, most definitely, white men in general, do need to do far more to protect womenfolk. And, we can see these women's activist groups on the right springing up. And they're now beginning to say that we need to stop immigration completely to protect them. I completely agree, we most definitely do. And in truth, remigration can never succeed whilst we're allowing streams of immigrants to come into the country, no matter where in the world they're coming from. That has to be stopped, as I said, in the policy about the Nationality and Remigration Act. That's on the dailyagenda.co.uk website. I would suggest you go over there and take a look at it and leave a comment. Make any suggestions for an amendment or an addition. It's entirely up to you. Your commentary is welcome. But the simple truth is, I'm trying to do everything I can with not a particularly large budget and not a huge amount of resources, although I'm giving it everything that I can. And I could do with more help from nationalists, in truth, certainly. But we all need to help each other, because this is not about one man or one woman. It never has been about that. No one man or woman can ever win this battle. This is something that we can only do together. It's teamwork. And if we're not going to work together, then obviously the enemy is going to triumph. And I don't think any of us want that, do we now? I most definitely do not want it. I want nationalism to triumph. I want common sense, sensible nationalism to triumph over this toxic leftism and wokeism, which is truly destructive. Truly, deliberately destructive, particularly on young people who are much more susceptible to this vicious brainwashing, and that's exactly what it is. And so, yes, we have to work together and we have to do more. And I think nationalists, in truth, need to stop expecting so much from their leaders and to do more themselves. It's all very well tuning into a YouTube channel or going to a nationalist website, for example, and expecting everything to be done. But that's not the way it works in the real world. This is something that we have to do together. We have to be proactive in our unity, because only unity breeds that proactiveness that we need to actually win. And without it, we will not win. That really is, the most salient fact I could ever offer anyone. Victory will come through unity, through strength in numbers, and through being proactive and indefatigable. Indefatigable in our determination to succeed, but not by throwing ourselves at a gate like a bull at a gate with ridiculous, ill-thought-out strategy and tactics. On the contrary, no, we're not going to do that. But we do need to be determined and proactive. So when these young women are saying that we need to stop immigration completely to ensure their safety, absolutely, I agree. But there's only one way that we can really do that, in truth, and that is with mass remigration. Without it, their safety can never be guaranteed. And I've made it perfectly clear why I believe there should be mass remigration. I've detailed how and why it can be done and the period of time it would take. And so really, we need to put ourselves to the task, quite frankly, set ourselves to the task even more so than we have done, to ensure that the remigration campaign actually succeeds. It's almost a borderline issue at this moment in time. It's getting there. I can see the very, very first signs of it becoming a viral issue sweeping across social media. It's certainly become very prominent because nationalists have made it prominent. And there's another issue, talking of current affairs, entirely in this context and in keeping with what I've been discussing here tonight, is Bulcanization. So the more nationalists talk about Balkanization, the more you will see the centre-right, so-called, who are actually centre-left flag groups in terms of their ideologically fluid mindset, imitating what we're doing. I've noticed that more of them are now talking about Bulcanization. You know, I had this discussion about 3 months ago with Professor David Betts. You know, the man who's postulating the theory that there will be a civil war in Britain within the next 5 years, and he's stipulated all the reasons why he believes that will be the case. And, you know, I discussed with Professor Betts exactly what I thought of Bulcanization and introduced him to a new term, primary Bulcanization. So there are 3 stages of Bulcanization. There is the initial Bulcanization, in which communities start to become divided, or as Trevor Phillips once said, was it sleepwalking to apartheid? Well, that in itself is the second phase, Bulcanization. First, there's proto-Bulcanization, the first steps. Then there's Bulcanization, where we're at right now. Although I would say London and Manchester are on the very cusp of primary Bulcanization. And what does primary Bulcanization actually mean? It's that point of no return, when in truth the sectarian division is so deeply rooted in society, caused by mass immigration and the diversity delusion. You know what Suella Braverman said, multiculturalism has failed. We know, we've known for a very long time. We predicted it long before Suella Braverman entered politics. And she's Indian as well, by the way, you know, married to a Jewish Zionist. So I'm perfectly sure she does know that multiculturalism has failed. We definitely do. And so that's the issue with primary Balkanization, is I feel London is, if not quite there yet, it is almost quite there in the context of primary Balkanization. Birmingham, absolutely, second largest city in Britain. That's almost there as well, although London is significantly more advanced. And so in essence, when David Betts talks about the potential for a civil war, we're looking at an ignition switch issue. So let's say there is another incident like Southport last year, and people are postulating the theory that another atrocity of that nature will create such an ignition, such a spark in society, that it will set off the process of primary Balkanization, which some people call civil war. I agree, it is most likely in actual fact to happen because of the monstrosity of what has happened. Starmer said a nation of strangers. Well, we've been a nation of strangers for a long time, haven't we? And what do they know about us and what do we know about them? You know, integration is a grotesque fantasy. It is just clinical delusion. So that's what I have to say on current affairs tonight, is that the key issues are protecting women, remigration, and also Balkanization, and how much longer is this situation going to go on. Although I totally agree with Kenny Smith when he says that, you know, it is cowardly to attempt no form of political solution to this overriding problem. And that in truth is exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to achieve a political solution so that we don't end up in a civil war situation of the nature outlined by Professor David Betts, who wants that. Frankly, we don't want it. But it's entirely possible that it could happen, and we simply just cannot take our eyes off the ball on it. There could be an atrocity tomorrow that sends it up, although most people are actually saying it'll be 2026. I tend to agree with that, in truth. I'll explain that in another show, the reasons why for it. But, you know, let's crack on with the political solution, and let's press forward with protecting our women by making the remigration campaign a viral issue all across social media, and then on the doorsteps, so that everyone is au fait with remigration, so that they know what it means and the whole purpose behind it. And that's the only way in which we can succeed to win with a remigration campaign. And we have to do that together, as one, as a united body of people working towards the same aim. Are you with us? Are we together? Well, I'm certainly with you, and I hope you're with me.